Hey now. Welcome to the Next Issue Podcast. We are a bi-weekly comic book podcast out of Dallas. We are part of the Dallas On Air family. We are also co-hosts on the Just a Sec podcast, and we're three friends that talk about our lifelong love of comic books. How you guys doing?
Not too bad. And yourself?
I'm all right. Kyle? Microphone?
Hey, guys. There we go.
Hey, Kyle.
You're here, I promise. Not sure about myself sometimes, though. So, hey, guys. It's another episode. What's everyone got this week?
I've just been trying to read every single one of these books.
It's hard.
I am a completist, so I try to read everything. Kyle has way more fun with it. He's like, well, why don't we just read the ones we like? And I'm like,
well, no, I read a good chunk of them, but it's just, it's...
Yeah, but you take a more positive direction on it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. They wrote this one backup story in a Vampirella book I have to go find. And that's what I did. I went and bought the Vampirella book that had one story, and it's actually pretty great.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Character I never could get into. I tried. I mean, Vampirella came out back in that mid '90s when they were doing all these indie creations, but I just could not get into it.
Well, then let me tease you with this one. It's not really a focus on her. It's a focus on Archie Goodwin.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of interesting the way they tell this story, but it's pretty awesome.
Cool.
What have you been up to, Adrian?
Trying to get through all this research.
I know.
I mean, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much they'd done together, and then
It's such a short amount of time, too.
Yeah, and it was a short amount of time, but I pushed through it, and then there's some other things that I was telling you guys about how there's nothing like finding an old box of comics.
Yeah.
I was at a friend's house and found 400 comics that he had that his uncle had just stowed at his house, and just going through that was just nostalgia city. So that kind of distracted me for a day and a half or so. But yeah, just reading through all this, there's some really good stories we were going to get to.
Yeah. I had a great time with this. I owned most of these. Some I had to revisit. Some I had to go out and buy.
Yeah.
I realized I was missing some books. I didn't get to everything, but I think we're just going to run through Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's work from DC to Marvel. They did do a Vampirella story, like I said. That's, if you want to hunt that one down, it's a pretty good story with Archie Goodwin in it. So let's start with Catwoman, When in Rome. What'd you think, Adrian?
Probably my...
I'm going to have to lean on you guys for this one. This was also...
Yeah, well, he had a lot of
weird.
hot sports opinions.
Well, okay, so...
I think this is what made Catwoman your favorite now?
It's one of my... I just like the way Tim Sale draws Catwoman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then getting into Superman for All Seasons, just the way he draws women, period.
Yeah.
It's not that hypersexualized 90s look,
Right.
but there's something still very sexual about it.
No, I was going to say...
It's simplistic but sexual. And
the way he drew Catwoman in either Long Halloween or
it's the
Dark
same.
Fate,
It's the same style.
You're right. There is a very sexual kind of prowess to it.
Yeah, but it's very simple.
Not Jim Lee, not Liefeld. Where it's
No.
Muscle on top of muscle where muscle's not supposed to be, but this kind of nice, sleek, slender,
Sleek and curves where they're supposed to be.
Like a real person?
Yeah, like a real person. Yeah.
And plus, they put in her character so much because she doesn't really... I mean, she gets into panels and she's up close. She's in with Blondie. She's in on Riddler.
Right.
She is... I mean, the way he puts her in panel placement just alone shows that she is aggressive. She is definitely up in your face, and especially when she fights Cheetah in the book.
Right. That was a great moment. Just the book overall, just the whole series was really good.
Yeah.
Just the way I think there's the ongoing theme is how they construct a story. Because I find a lot of this is stories that we've heard about, that we read about before, just the way they construct the story and able to make you... There's a nostalgia piece to it, but it's also fresh at the same time, although these are 50-year-old stories, And then there's some, like when in Rome, I didn't know that...
Catwoman.
Spoiler alert, Falcone's Catwoman's father.
She believes it.
She believes
Oh,
it.
yeah.
She believes it. Yeah. And
There's a lot of evidence in that
Advance
book.
alert, we are going to talk spoilers about
Right.
every one of these books. So this is your, if you have not read any of these books as we go into them, we will spoil them for you.
Right.
I loved Catwoman. It went back, told a little bit of her history. It saw two villains I haven't really seen together, Riddler and Catwoman.
Right.
And what I loved is kind of just seeing what kind of person Riddler is with women. And
Right.
now we know.
Yeah.
Because Gotham does a definite different portrayal of Riddler.
Yes.
And what they do in the book, just the way he even draws him, just this kind of like small,
yeah.
tiny man.
That's he's different from anybody else that draws the Riddler.
Well, it's definitely different than what they're doing in the current Batman Rebirth books, because right now they're talking about like sort of the first year of Batman there, but there's a gang war going on, and all of the villains either take on one side, Riddler or Joker. And there's like one arc where they're talking about how there was a 3-day battle between Deadshot and Deathstroke, and each one has sided with one of these two villains, and he is not made to seem like this really thin, lanky kind of character. That, you know, it's like they make him seem like a strong, dominant, kind of smart individual that like
Right.
really you got to mess with. So
right.
I think anytime you take any of the portrayals of any of the villains, there becomes a hierarchy of, and it's weird because in film and TV, it's definitely whoever you get as a home run actor,
Yeah.
you go, oh, they found the voice. So I definitely see that in a lot. I mean, I think that's definitely why we got Captain Cold and Heatwave ending up in Legends of Tomorrow,
Right.
because you got two guys great together, seem to have found the voice for their characters, and even without Captain Cold, Heatwave is great alone.
Yeah,
they
he
also
is.
they also got lucky because they weren't just two actors they brought together. They'd already worked together on Prison
Oh,
Break.
yeah.
So
There was
they
already
had
that chemistry.
dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's great now is, you know, I'll admit I have not watched Gotham the last couple of seasons. When I did, the one thing I did enjoy was Penguin and Riddler together. They were living together, and it was kind of an interesting take to see villains like that, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy seeing these kind of moments between characters that are small, and I think that's what Loeb excels at when he has characters like that, and he can put them in a room and just have a discussion. It's fantastic, and
Right.
we'll see a lot more of that. I think it is Marvel books. They're more intimate. They're definitely a handful of characters as opposed to the Long Halloween, where you've just got this massive story over 12 issues that kind of covers all of Batman mythology and villains.
But I got to give credit to Loeb there. It's he's good about expanding a story, not to like most stories will take place in a couple issues, and it's like maybe a couple days at most that it does. Long Halloween is a month per book.
It's a year. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
year and a month.
But
I think it's 13 issues.
Yeah, he does a good job of spanning out because he did the same thing with Hush. Hush wasn't just something he did in a matter of 1 or 2 issues. That was a 12-issue story arc also, trying to figure out who, the character was, how he was messing with Batman. So I think Loeb has this good way of kind of... There's sometimes when I read an issue and I get really pissed off because, I got to wait another 2 or 3 issues, or they span a story out for so long, I just don't want to do it. But I think he does it to where it leaves the reader intrigued enough to where you're going to want to go get the next one and pick it up. So
Right.
So all in all, what'd you think of the story? I mean, it's 6 issues.
It was an
It's
A+.
A+.
I gave it. It was short. It was sweet. It was to the point, and just a really good story. I mean, they went to Rome, so there's new characters involved, but there's still some. It'll get into one of the issues I kind of have with the Loeb sale stuff that kind of repetitive, but actually kind of cool at the same time, is that each issue kind of brings in like a new villain, somebody, but kind of works within the story. That same thing with Spider-Man Blue. Each issue there was a new character that he was going up against, but it really did make sense of why they were there, and then the way he ties it all in at the end as to why they all came together. Besides the love story aspect of it, When in Rome and Spider-Man Blue are pretty much kind of the same story, if you think about it.
okay.
Each issue kind of dealing with and somebody's screwing with them, and you come to the fact that there's one person behind the whole thing. But like I said, I gave it an A+. I thought it was a really good story. blew through it pretty quickly, so I wasn't bored with it at all. Yeah. And it was a good start to the research that we were doing.
Yeah. As we go through these, give me a little bit of your history and what you know about some of the books that he's done that they've done for DC. Let's go into the Long Halloween, because that's probably the one that's most known.
Right.
Most people have read, and
Well, I think that's what really started this combo of creator team,
Right.
Rob and
Right.
Sale.
well, I think before that though, it was. They had done a couple of books,
Challenges.
a couple of books that we have tried to read, and as we get into it, we're not going to talk about Gambit and Wolverine. I tried to read that book, and that may be one of their early collaborations, but I'm not a fan of Gambit, and it is
Right.
so
I feel
hard
the
to
same
get
way.
through that book. If anyone is a fan of Gambit and just goes, you don't know what you're talking about, send me issues to read. Let me know what I'm missing,
Oh, yeah.
because I would love to read that book and just be more excited to get more out of those characters. But all I seem to see was kind of like, the same thing we know about Gambit, the same thing we know about Wolverine.
If you want to read a good, and this is just my opinion, want to read a good like X-Men duo one, Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown.
Oh yeah, I do.
And that's
I
where
do
you-
love that book.
Yeah, so if you want, before we start getting off this tangent, if you want to read something that's good and kind of talk about that, go read Meltdown from the late '80s, and then we can kind of get into that kind of topic.
Yeah. Now, did y'all lose me? I don't sound okay. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Long Halloween. Let's get into that. What'd y'all think about that? Because that was a pretty in-depth book. You had a ton of villains. You had to kind of go through the whole Batman mythology.
Who
and Rogues
didn't they
Gallery.
go into in Batman? I mean,
know.
almost everybody. I mean, you had Croc, you had Grundy, you had Riddler, Joker. I mean, can't think of one villain that didn't make an appearance.
Kite Man?
Okay, Kite Man.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
You want me to go obscure? I'll go obscure, but not
Comic King.
Yeah, but not obscure enough for Tom King's current run. I know
Right.
he's telling the origin
Yeah.
of Kite Man,
Which is pretty awesome.
Long Halloween is such a fantastic book.
It is.
Just for the handling of all the villains, really giving the world's greatest detective a mystery. And plus, I just love the style he does
was great.
all those characters in. I mean, When in Rome is great. You get to see Catwoman. You see her in like the Jim Ballant costume. You get
Right.
to see. I wasn't a fan of the mask so much,
Right.
that she had in that, but Catwoman's had so many different costumes. It's kind of neat to have an artist go through the different things that they have and show her in one style that he's kind of done for himself.
Right.
And then to see all of the villains show up. See what version of Riddler are you going to do? Why does that define what your Riddler is in the story? I mean, because he's a small, sniveling man, but are we going to do the Jim Carrey look? Are we going to do a cool stylized look? I just like seeing all the different takes on the villains, especially when they're in prison.
Well, I mean, it's all the takes are very interesting. They're not boring at all, and they're different. Like there's different tweaks. You loaned me the Absolute Edition 3 months ago, and I you were surprised. Like 3 days later, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna bring it back to you next time we come do a show." And you're like, "You're finished with it already?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done." And he's like,
Yeah, because
I mean, I love the Long Halloween. It was. I wanted. I was recommended it, and that's why I asked if you had it, and you were like, "Yeah, I'll bring it." And
it's the Absolute Edition, so
It's
it has everything in
and
it.
so I tore through that thing, and it was. It's probably one of my favorite stories, Batman stories.
Yeah, I
of all
definitely, as far as these books, I recommend The Long Halloween. I recommend When in Rome if you enjoyed that and you want just a little taste of a Catwoman story.
Right.
Dark Victory. What did you guys think of that book? Another Batman book.
I love Long Halloween. I probably still might like it more than Dark Victory, but the thing I like about Dark Victory is because it introduces us to Robin. It brings us Dick Grayson, and he's always going to be. I mean, no offense to people who love Batman, but bring me Nightwing, bring me Dick Grayson, Robin, bring me I mean, even Tim Drake. I've always been more of a Robin fan.
Well, Robin redefines Batman.
Well,
Exactly.
Short
No, it
like
does.
that. I
And
can
so
see where
it's-
you can bond.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like seeing that. I mean, and what's interesting is in the Captain America book, we get that same take,
Bucky.
but with Bucky.
Yeah.
So who are these heroes once they have a sidekick?
Exactly.
Once they put a child in harm's way? Who are these
And
guys?
even then, you even when they brought Drake and Tim Drake, they brought the one line: "You can't have Batman without Robin." I think Robin, especially in this book, is what finalize Batman into the hero that he needed to become. And that's what, and you still have that kind of, like, we still have a lot of the characters that were from Long Halloween, but again, you bring that dynamic. You have the dark hero, but now you bring that light side. So how did this combo kind of finish out that story?
Yeah. I was unable to get through Dark Victory again. It's a book I own. It's a book I recall. And so I'm just going to touch on a few things. When you see Robin, you get this kid who is angry and he wants revenge. And how does a guy like Batman control that and train that and turn him into Robin? What did you guys think?
I didn't get a chance to read Dark Victory.
Okay.
I didn't get a.
We're going to focus on Kyle then.
Yeah.
Kyle, who has an automatic recall memory.
I don't know. It was just really good because, like, you talk about that because, I mean, I think it's not just this book. Any book you have, you see, Dick Grayson is this character who sees his parents die, and they definitely go into that. And like the art style of this whole book, it's like, it's Bruce. How am I going to channel that anger? If I don't channel this, he's going to, I'm trying to give him his own outlet to deal with this, but also make sure he doesn't do something he's going to regret. But again, at the end of the day, it's got to be his choice.
Right.
Whether or not he follows the dark path or the light path. And and I think he does a great job of trying to help Dick figure that out.
Okay.
I think one of my favorite bits about the story, though, is at the very end. You have he's talking to Gordon, and Gordon says, "So you adopted this kid? He's not, he's not my son. He's my partner." And then you see Barbara Gordon just pop out the door, and he goes, "Dad," and she's looking at him to stop speaking. And then you see Robin just kind of standing there. He's flipping all over the place, and he just looks back at Barbara, and you see Gordon look back and goes, he goes, looks at Robin and goes, "Don't even think about it, son," because this is going to be the start of an actual relationship throughout the rest of the DC universe, Barbara and Dick, and that's always been one of my favorites too. Is Batgirl, Robin. I've always had this awesome dynamic. And so I think that was just a nice little kind of tidbit that hints like, hey, they're going to have a long history, but it's Gordon's kind of like, no.
and that makes me want to see a book by Loeb and Sale doing sidekicks, who realize they're sidekicks and working together and what that means.
I think you just said it right there. That's probably what I'd want to see. Oh. All right, never mind. You just made me answer one of my own questions. I'll answer later.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Now
doing sidekicks, isn't that what gets us in trouble with comic books? Old man, young Ward. It gets a little creepy.
That's more in a Garth Ennis type story. Did anyone read Haunted Night? These were a collection of stories that led up to Long Halloween.
I need to, but no, I have not.
Okay, so then we're just going to... And then we talked about Challengers of the Unknown. This was another Loeb Sale book. We're not going to get into that much, which was weird because it was hard to find digitally.
It
was very hard to find digitally.
I still need to read because Challengers is one of those weird series that's not superhero based. It's just four random dudes, sometimes five, who just are science based, and they kind of take care of monsters and sci-fi based things. And it's one of the things that I was always kind of up and down whether I liked, depending on what creative team did them. But it was always like this kind of... they weren't relying on superpowers. It's like Fantastic Four, but we didn't get hit by cosmic rays. How do we use science and technology to stop, what's going on?
So what? They're the lone gunmen of the DC universe?
They're the FF of the DC universe without superpowers.
Yeah,
they're they're the lone gunmen.
They're science based, and actually, I kind of go, I'd love to see Warren Ellis just kind of nerd out and get into science.
The way they're describing it sounds like how you described Planetary to me.
But Planetary had powers.
They had powers. This, I don't have a definitive Challengers of the Unknown story to tell you this is what it should be. Go read it. So if anyone listening has a huge knowledge of Challengers of the Unknown and can send us some recommendations, we will definitely read those. Okay, and for the last DC book, Superman, Man for All Seasons.
This was a lot of fun.
Very fun.
I had a slight problem, just a little bit, with the way they drew Superman, only because I think with the Batman stuff, I mean, I know that's the one thing. He's always Sale would always draw Batman, he pretty muscular and stuff. But at least there was like this. He kind of seemed almost at least. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Like didn't seem like too big or too smaller than everyone else. It was almost like he kept everybody on par. With Superman in this one, it almost looked like he was on roids half the damn time. Like his broad shoulders, and every time he'd stand next to somebody, it was almost more like I think they were trying to really push him to be more like he's Superman. And I feel like sometimes he was a little bit drawn bigger than almost all the other characters in the actual book.
Yeah.
Other than that, I thought it was really fun because you're that first issue when they're. He's there, and he's learning. Oh, I can fly. I can run fast. And then you have Pa Kent going. It's like, well, I'm kind of worried about him, but how's And Ma's like, well, you got to let him go. He's going to have to figure out how to handle his life in the world. We can't protect him for He's about to graduate high school. So like, what else are we going to do?
For me, Superman's always been about the parents.
Right.
Everyone should aim to be as good as Ma and Pa Kent. Your kid should be half as good as Clark.
Right.
If you're doing Zack Snyder.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand that mentality. I always loved Smallville for the fact that we had parents in the show a lot of the time. He was in high school as the show started, but even as it got older, and we have one of those critical things that Superman has to understand is that he cannot fight death.
Right.
And I think that was really important, not only in the Donner film, but in the TV show as well. Because that one really got to me. A lot of people, I probably will not give John Schneider props for his role.
Oh, no.
As Pa Kent.
I will.
He did a great job. And to have that role of being someone who has to teach the most powerful person in the universe how to be good. That's what Ma and Pa Kent are, and they're part of America. I mean, that's what you want your kids to be. You want them to be so good that they know how to go out and do the right thing.
When you think about it, like, you kind of go look at Superman and Batman are both orphans in their own form or fashion, but Ma and Pa Kent are the Batman to Superman, whereas Batman is the parental version to Robin. He wanted to make sure that Robin didn't fall in that line. And so Ma and Pa Kent, you don't have Ma and Pa Kent, you don't have Clark Kent, you don't have Superman, the red, blue, and that's saving America. They're the ones who incorporate. It's like, you got to have these strong values. It wasn't his parents on Krypton that raised him. It was these two people like were hardworking, probably lower than middle class kind of family in a small Kansas town, and it's their moral values that helped raise him to become the superhero that he is.
Well, and I think the way that they tell the story from different perspectives is what's really incredible.
Awesome. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. For me, it was Lex. That was the story that I really enjoyed the most, because it was like Lex needed to know how to defeat this guy.
Right.
And he knew.
Yeah.
He knew what to take away from him to make him go away. And Clark had to find what's in him to stay.
Right.
To keep fighting, to keep doing the good fight. I mean, and that's what we need nowadays. We need the good people doing the good fight out there.
Yeah.
Well, just to get off for just a second, you were talking about how Superman can't fight death. I think that was not a better story told than an All-Star Superman.
Oh, yeah.
That one, okay, that's another story for another day.
Yeah, no,
but that book itself needs to be talked about.
Yeah. Just, him, how he deals with death. And that there's something that he just can't fight, and I don't think there was a better story told with Superman about that one issue.
That's probably my top 5.
But all Superman for All Seasons, which is a fantastic read.
To me, this is up there with What's So Wrong with Truth, Justice, and the American Way, Superman 775, also All-Star Superman. But I feel like this is what you need to start with.
Right.
If everyone knows Superman and they have this idea of what their origin is, but digging into this and seeing the story told of what other people within the superhero community or within Superman's mythology think of him,
right,
and getting those stories, that's a really great foundation.
And I can't remember who.
You were saying they should start with this. I almost have to argue. I've read Birthright. In Birthright, I think, because it depends. Again, you're going with that multiverse of where what's the retconning of the DC universe. But I think another one that came out after this one was Superman Birthright. I thought was a good kind of origin, because it took you right back to one of the things I've always loved about before Burns did the retcon was the fact that Lex and Clark were friends back in Smallville, and then the fact that Superboy was trying to save Lex's life, and then he was sort of inadvertently responsible for him losing his hair is what caused him for his hate for Superboy. And I always like that kind of dynamic, that kind of it's from a childhood almost kind of obsession. And then when they took that away in the retconning after Crisis, I was like,
it's weird reading this and seeing an orange-haired
with
Lex
hair. I know.
What I did love about the book, another thing was I can't remember who the colorist was on that, but it's still Tim Sale's artwork. But I mean, just how important the coloring is, because it looked like it was almost like a Norman Rockwell painting compared to most comic books.
Yeah. And I think that's what Sale adds to this. As we start to get into the Marvel books, and I'll define this better, these stories seem to take place in a Silver Age.
Right.
They're different. They're not as dark. We're talking pre 1986. Is it 86 or 84? Yeah, pre Dark Knight, pre Watchmen, pre.
Yeah, so 86 would be about when I would say that crossed over. Yeah, so, but I mean, in some even with the Marvel stuff, there's stuff in there that like you think was taking place during the 60s. But they still have small things like they'll have like a computer that's not from 60 in there, you know. But
right.
like say we'll draw up a few things to kind of keep you a little bit more in current times. But you know, when we get into Daredevil Yellow, he's in the yellow and red costume, and that was something that was definitely pre 70s kind of stuff. So you've kind of this mix. It's like Bruce Timm with Batman the Animated Series. It's Batman set in current time, but he's got that old 40s or 50ish kind of style history to Gotham and the cars and everything. So it's like this is kind of cool.
One of the cool things about what I'm seeing here in the imagery, because again, I don't read a lot of the stuff you guys are putting out there, but what it feels like is though it's harkening back to the Max Fleischer cartoons. You're going back to the original 1954 cartoons that were coming out. But I mean, you're also getting that in the Batman too. You're getting those really kind of almost like clean lines, and you're getting those geometric shapes, and you're getting cartoonish type violence.
Yeah. And that's a interesting thing. I want to get y'all's take on this. Is Superman a killer?
No, he's had to on a few occasions, but he's not, and that was I think the one thing that's him over everybody else. I think is the fact that he's not a killer. He's like that, the all American way. It's like there's always he's baseball, apple pie, American flag.
It's all about perspective, right? Though.
True.
I mean, we can just look at history, like Cubans that are here in America for the most part hate Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
There's no denying that he has has led a brutal regime throughout his life. But there's some good things that he's done, like over in Africa. He sent troops over to help Africans. And what he's done as far as medical and education for his country are good things. But at the same time, he's still a brutal dictator.
Yeah.
And so we as an audience may not see Superman as a killer, but maybe the family of the people that he's killed may see him as a killer. I mean, I guess it's more. Yeah, but it's more philosophical. But
unless you're talking about injustice, he hasn't really gone out there to kill that many people.
Yeah, to me, he shouldn't be a killer.
He did successfully kill Brandon Ruth's career. I'm just saying.
He's on Legends tomorrow, season 4.
He plays an awesome Ray Palmer.
Ray Palmer, yeah. I do love him as the Atom.
Yeah.
In fact, I really love that little kid aspect of him just being this rich kid with a lot of toys.
Right.
Okay, so that covers a lot of the DC books. What do you think their impression is walking away, looking at what their work is for Batman, Catwoman, Challengers? Is there anything that you see that defines it?
It's just really good storytelling.
Yeah,
it's some of the best individually. It's the best Catwoman story I've read.
What I will say,
Long Halloween's probably one of the best Batman stories I've ever read.
Definitely top 5.
And
Catwoman, that may be the top.
It's probably the best. It is the best that I've read, just solo. And then as far as Superman, that's probably my top 5.
Top 5.
So.
I'll say this much, I want to say this after we talk about the Marvel, but I do see a slight difference between the DC stuff and then the Marvel. I can't talk about Captain America White, but there was a connection between Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Hulk that I want to bring up. That I think that was more of how the stories were different between the two.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to just jump into the Marvel books as a whole, or go through them one by one? Because I was going to start with Daredevil Yellow.
We can.
Probably my favorite.
Really? I really loved it. It goes back. I mean, for the art shows a more innocent time. You see Karen Page, who looks almost like a teenager, and you realize what I see in the Marvel stories is they take this moment that has happened, and in Daredevil Yellow, we know what happens to Karen Page. So let's talk about Karen Page in the beginning and during a more innocent time. Where we had the early days of Nelson and Murdoch.
Right. Well, and that's what I loved about this. I'm going to take off Karen for 1 second, but the thing I loved about the story was showing a more light-hearted Daredevil and Matt Murdock. That I think they're kind of getting back into the current book, but things he's gotten so dark and almost so gloomy. I mean, almost sort of not necessarily Batmanish, but he's this kid's like, whoa, I get to jump around, I get to wear this kind of suit. I'm becoming a superhero. Like he was a fun kid who could smile when he's swinging around New York and taking on supervillains. And that was like, I love this. There's almost an innocence to him that he hasn't been through all this pain and stuff or falling out with other people. That it was just like, this is the kind of Daredevil I want to read, because even though he might be sort of Marvel's Batman, he's not Batman because he finds the fun in all this. Even though bringing fear into the villains, he's like, no, hey, look at me, I'm jumping off the top of the Empire State Building.
Right.
So,
as we go through each one of these, again, this is what I'm going to go to. This is a time of innocence. This is a Silver Age story for readers who've been through the dark stuff and they know what's coming, and it's showing each character who they were before this, and by hearing the narration from Matt, from Peter, you get to know where they are now, because they're still trying to cope with loss.
Right.
That's the connection between all the stories.
It's loss and love stories.
Yeah, love stories.
These they're all about loss, but they're all love stories, and then
that's what's interesting.
And when we get to Blue, maybe I was
don't get me wrong, Blue's awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna probably spend most of.
I'll give you my thoughts on Blue when we get to it. Okay. But yeah,
well,
Yellow I liked. I could have used some better villains.
I don't know. It was like I said,
but that was kind of the villains he had back then.
Yeah.
I mean, you still get Kilgrave.
You did, yes.
Which I didn't realize, and that was one thing I didn't realize, his power base. I didn't think you had to visually see his power base. I thought it was just something like or if he spoke, and if you heard him, then you just became as.
Well, I think sometimes when you define the power, you don't have to stick to continuity.
Yeah.
I'm gonna crap on continuity again and say, does it work for the story? If I can change this piece, if I present it in the story and say it's aura based, it's location based.
Well,
and I was fine with the way they did it.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it worked better, and it made the story easier to work around. When you give an all powerful character, man, it's tough to write your way out of that.
The interesting way of like you said, they can change it with Jessica Jones, the Netflix series. They made it Pheromone based.
Yeah.
So, he can control a wide range, and like you said, at the core of it, Kilgrave is probably one of the most powerful villains. Scariest villains.
Yeah.
As much as people thought Jessica Jones was boring,
in the Jessica Jones TV series, they made him that way.
Yeah,
and I don't.
Scary.
No,
it's terrifying.
In there. And I also think a part of that's Tennant's acting. I think he brought that level. But
he's so good.
Yes,
but I don't think they do that enough in the comic books. And,
no, they don't.
And he wasn't scary in the comic book. He was just like this kind of smart ass who just kind of like is like, hey, you can't touch me. Guys,
now
which Tennant's actually going to be at
I know
at
Fan Days. Yeah.
So.
So don't get too close. Yeah, don't get too close.
Talk about pheromone based. I'm sorry. I think if you talk to any Doctor Who fan, that thing's just going to be coded. So.
For me, Daredevil Yellow, Hulk Gray, and Spider-Man Blue are love stories, and they're love triangles. You've got Matt, you've got Foggy, and you've got Karen.
Yeah, that was a good aspect of it.
We saw it in the show done pretty well.
Yes.
What do you think about the Hulk triangle is a little bit weirder because...
The Hulk triangle is weird, but it's about not marrying, but it's about finding people that have the traits of your parents when you date, and it's like, well, how much is this person like your mother? How much is this person like your father when you're dating? And I think the monster is what she's dealt with in the past, because she sees he's Thunderbolt's a monster. But then there's this way she can communicate with Hulk.
I was thinking differently. I was thinking the love triangle is Bruce, Hulk, and Betty, because you have her in love with Bruce. The Hulk's trying to help Betty, but Betty doesn't want to deal with, and it's this weird kind of dynamic because the Hulk and Ben are the same person, even though she doesn't realize it. So,
I put Thunderbolt Ross in there because he loves his daughter. He's doing everything to set himself as an example of the violence the monster creates. He's trying to become a victim to show, to prove what he knows or what he believes
Right.
is the Hulk.
Well, and that's what I loved about the talk between Leonard and Bruce. It was just the talk. He's like saying, "No, I'm not sure who
That was a
I'm
nice
not,
dynamic.
I'm not sure who the villain, the monster really is, the Hulk or Thunderbolt." It was this, and that, and just is I like there was one point where Leonard's like saying, you just described blah blah blah, and he goes, yeah, and you just had Leonard go, And he's like, don't do that to me. It's like, what do you mean? Every psychiatrist always goes, but they think you're kind of talking out your ass. And he's just like, you want really to get me pissed off? Listen, Bruce, you asked me to come here. I'm just trying to help out.
That almost would be a great setup for a miniseries, is just to have Hulk in therapy and talk about these things. Because one of the things he talks about is the first time he hurt Betty.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think we've had that moment in comics. I don't recall it. So if someone wants to fact check me, Daniel.
I mean, I'm sure it's out
I'm
there.
sure
There had to be an issue where, in somewhere in that 30 years of time, where Betty was there and he actually knocked a wall down, a piece of rock flew off and hit her in the head or something. So there's got to be something in the history of Hulk where he's unintentionally hurt Betty.
Yeah.
But then if you go, and spoilers for all the Hulk history, if you think about it, he's at the time when she died, he was the one supposedly responsible for her death.
Yeah.
Because it was the gamma radiation poisoning that she got that killed her.
Yeah, that was where I was kind of lost, because I know they were talking about a story in the future where she's dead, and I don't know that moment.
Well, no, and I do, because I read it, because they reconcile, and they had just had a good night, and then she's lying in bed where I think Bruce is taking a shower, and she just kind of closes her eyes and her whole body turns green. And you find out later, Bruce comes out and they have her funeral, and he's talking to Thaddeus, and you find out that basically because all her exposure to him, because the gamma radiation, is what poisoned her to die.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I say that's why I know they're tying into the current universe, because in Daredevil Yellow, he talks about he's talking about Karen dying, and he goes, he's going through all the villains, Bullseye. And that's where he connects Bullseye to, Mysterio. I think it was Mysterio. I think he actually mentioned Mysterio. And he's like, there are only certain, all these different villains who used to wear costumes, and he talks Mysterio, and that's where they're connecting to the Kevin Smith run.
The Guardian Devil.
Yeah.
Which is such a dark story that it's so nice to kind of go back. I mean, granted, I will say that Kevin Smith is my second favorite Daredevil story of all time. This is probably third. You've got to have that story in front of you. You've got to have that darkness to have this look back on their relationship.
Is Born Again your number one, like mine?
No.
I don't know. I'm not sure what I definitely, those are in the top. If I had to choose top 3 or 5, it's Kevin Smith and
it's going to be probably Frank Miller's run before
Born Again.
Before Born Again.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Man Without Fear.
I think you have to have that one to get to the other places. I don't know if you have other points in time in Daredevil's history that get him to where he is now or advances his character. I hate seeing him really dark. I didn't like the storyline where he took over the Hand for a while.
Shadowland.
Yeah. But it's interesting because Daredevil pushes those limits. He gets to the point where he's almost the Punisher, but he's not good.
Well, how about when he faked his own death and he became, he started wearing that gray outfit. And he's like, I'm not Matt Murdock, and he's had some low points.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's definitely been some. Matt's been all over the place. I've really, I love Joe Kelly, but I think Joe Kelly wrote kind of the end of his run during his 300 issues, and gave him a metal costume and just weird ending there. I've
always liked Daredevil as a guest star in other comic books. I always thought he's always a good, not as a sidekick, but as a side character or guest star in other superheroes, whether it's been with Spider-Man, Captain America, the Defenders. Anytime he guest starred with the original Defender, I always thought he was a cool side character that would bring an extra dynamic because, I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah. Now, did either one of you read Captain America White?
No.
Okay. So Captain America White is Cap talking to Nick Fury and reliving an old story about Bucky before, or really the origin of Bucky, and Bucky from the comics, not from the movies. It is the innocence of the Silver Age. It is Bucky with a mask and tights, and just this kid who is not what we see in the film. He's a kid who is in the military, in the army, being exposed to death at every turn, and joining up with the Howling Commandos.
Right, which is interesting that he went that route because you asked us to come up with some more ideas for different colors.
Yeah.
And one of mine has to do with not really a love story, but something along those lines. So that's interesting that they went that route with that.
Well, y'all want to dig into that for a minute? I know we all want to talk about Spider-Man Blue, but the one thing I did task everyone with was give me a couple of colors and characters and title of a DC or Marvel book you'd like to see these guys tackle.
I already know which one I want to see.
What?
And just talking about the sidekicks, I want to see Teen Titans.
I
want to see the original Teen Titans, all 5.
You want to see the origin?
Or either the origin or some story that dealing with after they came together. But Robin, Wonder Girls, Kid Flash, Aqualad, and Speedy. I want to see a book because I think they would do an awesome job as those 5 together.
God, that would be great.
Again, right back to Dark Victory. You have this intro to Dick Grayson as Robin, but I think he did an awesome job. And the fun again, I'm going right back to Yellow. Yellow brought Daredevil in this really fun. He may be like in his late 20s and a grown up, but he was almost like a kid in a candy shop. Like, look at the powers I have, and I think one of my favorite scenes is it's issue 2 of Daredevil, and issue 2 or 3. But you have the Thing sticking his head right in the office of Murdoch and Nelson. He's like saying, "Are you the bums you're trying to be our lawyer?" And
that's great.
Yeah.
And Matt actually goes for a second. He goes, "There was a small part of me when this actually happened that they actually came to talk to me about being New York's newest superhero." And I'm just like, that's awesome because it's like, oh my God. I'm like, could I be famous? So It's just innocence. And I think with the sidekicks, I think those 5 in some story, especially if it's taking place in a 60 or 70-ish look kind of world, I think there's an innocence that they could have some fun with these 5. And maybe they're talking about, people they've lost or something they've, having to grow up and becoming the Flash and Troya and, Red Arrow and all this stuff. I think they could do this really nice story of those 5 together.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the debate the sidekicks have about we want to have our own team and then what their mentors send them in with. I want to see a page of Bruce talking with Robin of like, okay, so this is going to be your own thing. These are the things that I think you should do. I think you'd make a great leader. I think you'd do this. Just with each one of them, break that down. Give me a page of what their mentors would say to them because I would love to see that interaction. Because I don't think we see that a lot. But I think Jeff Loeb thinks about those things and takes those moments and puts them down. They're really, really good. Do you have a book you want to see from them? Or I sent out 3. I wanted 2 colors and give me a DC book, or give me a couple of DC books.
I really didn't think about DC. I thought when you asked that question, I kept thinking about colors, and because I really liked the aspect of how he wove the stories. I thought of Hawkeye purple.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets into when I started thinking about this, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with the rest of the book because. In comics, it's that NERD effect, the nerd effect. No one ever really dies, right?
Yeah.
So we know that most of these characters
come back.
They come back. So it's kind of weird. So with Mockingbird, we know she comes back, but I think it would be a great telling, how they met, just that.
Like have a real origin story to a couple that was together for a really long time.
And then she died.
Before you get into the continuity of, well, she was dead, she was a Skrull, she was this, now they're divorced. Like, we don't need that baggage.
No.
We just want to see 2 people fighting crime, falling in love. Give me that story.
Yeah.
And I trust Jeff Loeb to make me care so much and want to run out and buy it.
And then now after Secret Wars 2, maybe Iron Man Gold, where he's talking about Rhodey. Because they've been through some. Because Rhodey's dead after Secret Wars 2, right?
Yeah.
So just going back and telling.
Oh wow, that
Well, no, it's not. Civil War 2. Civil War 2.
Yeah.
You saying Secret Wars 2? I'm thinking a totally different book.
Yeah. Civil War 2.
The Beyonder, the giant white outfit. I mean,
yeah, but after Civil War 2, Rhodey's dead, and going back and because he helped him through his alcoholism. He took over the Iron Man mantle because of Tony's alcoholism.
Just every time Rhodey's been there for him, just tell those stories. Yeah. Oh God, that would be great.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love that pitch.
Okay. The 2 I'd love to see. I was thinking about this. One would be, and we don't have to necessarily use this color scheme, but I was thinking Vision Green. Maybe an early tone of the Vision, how after he wakes with Simon's brain patterns and how he's having to deal with humanity and joining the Avengers, and maybe that early look into the look of his relationship with the Scarlet Witch.
Because that's interesting, because I put Scarlet Witch red.
Okay.
I thought it would be an interesting take to do her love story, because everyone goes, well, her and Vision were in a relationship, and you go through all that. how did they get there? And it's weird because
no one really knows. It just kind of popped up.
Yeah, I mean, you had aspects of it in West Coast Avengers, John Byrne's run, but give us some moments, give us the early Avengers days.
Right.
I'd like to see the Tim Sale look on all the Avengers kind of further on in the history, because we do get to see them in the original in their original looks in Captain America. But Scarlet Witch Red, She-Hulk Green.
I thought about that as well. But I mean, the sad part about it is that they kind of made Jennifer into a slut. I mean, she's been with everybody.
Yeah, Juggernaut, Luke Cage.
Yeah.
Really?
I
guess I have not read all these.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
when they brought Juggernaut as part of the
Star
X-Men.
Fox. I mean,
Yeah.
She was with Star Fox?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Hawkeye.
bad.
They pretty much alluded that she slept with Hawkeye at least some point.
Yeah.
Hey, man, good for her. Like, who cares, you know?
Good for them.
Yeah. Except for Star Fox, I'm always going to question, because he's just a weird dude.
He's a weird dude.
No one's ever said, hey, you should bring Star Fox back.
Right.
And I'm sure I'll get some hate tweet, hey, Star Fox was awesome.
And just for stylization alone, because I don't know where they're going with this current Jane Foster Thor run, but she has cancer, and she's dying. So she's eventually going to have to die. I would like to see.
Yeah, you say that. You say that.
You say that.
She has to. I mean, I think it's unfair to people who are reading that book that have cancer that are going, oh, I can,
But we're Marvel. We're going to bring her back in 2 years because we're going to write
Well, I mean,
her
that's
continuity.
fine. But I mean, as a plot device, using that as a plot device, there has to be some kind of, and I hate to use the word payoff for that.
Well, unless she decides never to drop the hammer again, unless somebody. That's the thing. If she could choose that thing, as long as the hammer is on her, she doesn't have to change back into Jane Foster.
That's true.
And then, so I think that could lead into a story of her humanity. It's like, are you really going to do this?
But I wouldn't mind seeing a Thor, whatever color you want to choose for with that love story.
My DC book is Solomon Grundy, Case of the Mondays. I gave him a title.
Oh,
I want 7 issues that start with the rebirth of Solomon Grundy in different forms and tell that journey till his death at the end of that issue, and then start over. Give me Monday through Sunday, and give me an issue on each one that could stand alone, because we've seen different versions of Solomon Grundy.
Right.
I'd like to see them tackle this, because I think the style would be awesome.
Right.
The stories would be fantastic. But let's finish this out with Spider-Man Blue, which I think everyone has said is their favorite.
No.
Nope.
I think Yellow was my favorite.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So why is it your
Try
favorite?
on this. I want a Zack Snyder Brown, and I want the creators of Superman and Batman to look at him and go, "You're gonna make some really shitty movies. Please stop before you do it." That's what I want. Like 12 issues of him going, "You know what? This is wrong. Justice League wrong. Suicide Squad wrong. Just please go back."
Zack Snyder Brown.
God.
I love this. It was the first one I wanted to read, and that really kind of wrecked it for some of the other books, specifically the Gambit book, because I was really struggling with that.
Right.
Blue is such a sweet story about
It
loss.
may be at its core. It is in its truest sense. It's a love story, and it's actually, because it's a triangle. It's 3 different love stories at the same time, right? Because you have his love for Aunt May, which they are able to pull out and exploit. Not really exploit is a bad word, but they're able to show that love he has for Aunt May and him moving out.
They give him a moment.
Yeah, they give him a moment, and then his love for Gwen, and then her love for him, or her infatuation with him at that point, and then you throw in MJ, and one of the best moments is at the very end where she walks in on him while he's making it, and instead of being a jealous, crazy bitch, she has her man. She understands that he has a past, and she's like, "Tell her I said hi."
Well, that was
and then walks off.
That was the happiest of
great.
all the endings. I mean, because Daredevil, he's having to deal with well, Karen, you're still dead, but I'm trying to figure out, would you want me to be all moody, or would you want me to keep going on being the person you wanted me to be? Hulk's like, he gets all pissed off, goes through Leonard's office and becomes the Hulk and starts crying at a picture of Betty. But Peter, it's like, even though I miss you, my life is pretty, full, and
Right.
and and it's like I can't really complain. And MJ again has come and look, you have this past, and I've accepted that, and she even knows Gwen was your first love, and I've never tried to take that away from you. But but I also realize you've come to we're together, and you've never tried to hold Gwen over me, and so she's accepted that whole past.
I mean, pretty much because she knows this is going on.
Yeah.
And from what I understood in the writing, it's something he does every year.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not that.
And she gives him that one day, and for it to be Valentine's Day, is pretty freaking awesome for a chick to.
What I noticed too is this is a story about change, and the change is all in Flash.
Right.
Flash goes from being the bully to suddenly kind of seeing Peter as a rival, because now Peter knows these girls and has kind of earned Flash's respect.
Right.
And then you kind of go, Flash doesn't know who he is. He has the one moment where he's going, man, in high school I used to be everything, and now like I can't even get a date. Like he's the third wheel at these parties. Both girls are more interested in Peter because they've kind of grown up and moved on.
Right.
They want to see someone with, a little more than what Flash has to offer. And it's neat seeing Flash become a little kid and get excited about Spider-Man. Like that's who this person is. And I love the splash page. That's another thing that I've seen over and over again that Tim Sale loves to do is we get hit with splash pages that mean something.
Right.
And they're so great.
They're awesome.
I read digitally. It's hard for me to read a lot of the comics. So when I go through and I hit a splash page and it just goes from panel, then boom, it is such a treat to see that because you're starting to sort to see how that plays out as you do the smart read, and it hits each panel and you go, there's a bigger page I'm going to get to here in a moment. And it's such a great moment to open up.
And to go back to what I was talking about, how Sale draws a Catwoman. The way he drew Gwen and MJ in this is just awesome. Just awesome.
Very 70-ish look.
Very 70s, but
mod kind of, like late 60s, early 70s, that mod kind of look. And
I mean, it wasn't over-sexualized, but it was very sexy at
very
the same
high
time.
schoolish, like almost like senior year of like.
Well, yeah, because they were okay. I just love their looks. They're both completely different characters. They both talk differently. They both have this interest for Peter, but it's probably the most beautiful book.
Yes.
And I cannot recommend Spider-Man Blue enough.
I recommended it to a friend of mine, a female. I was like, if you want to get back in the comics, read this book. It's a short read, and it's probably one of the best, not only Peter Parker stories, it's probably one of the best love stories ever told in comics.
And what's your big suggestion, Yellow?
But yeah, but if you like Daredevil and like kind of an innocence, I say go with Yellow, but Blue is definitely up there too.
Yeah, I just made a few notes on this one, and I said what Loeb and Sale do is mold a time when things were simpler. We all look back on a time when we experienced loss, and they take us through that with a smile, and it takes us to a nice place where superheroes were just out trying to keep us safe and not
in
kill
some ways,
everyone.
These are almost therapy reads. They help you deal with loss and kind of just realize life isn't as horrible as you think.
Exactly. And I think Spider-Man may be the best one just because of who and what Gwen was.
Right.
If you know Daredevil's history and you read into Karen's loss, it's way different. And it's so much darker, but that's who those two characters are. Peter and Matt are worlds apart.
The funny thing about it is like a lot of people our age, maybe a little bit older,
Okay.
they just know MJ. They really don't know the Gwen Stacy. And they've seen her in like the last Amazing Spider-Man movies, but they really don't know her. And I think this is a good way of getting to know that portion of Peter.
All right. Well, that has been our episode. That is Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. If you liked any of it, or if you have other recommendations for us, give us a shout on our Facebook page. It's Next Issue Pod, or Next Issue Podcast, and on Twitter at Next Issue Pod. Where can we find you on the internet, Kyle?
At Kylopedia on most forms of social media.
And you can find me at Adrian_Harry.
And I'm on Twitter as at Clay_Harrison.